Hi, everyone. I'm just waiting as a number of people join us this evening. It's great to see so many of you. Well, not see you, but know that you're here with us. The first of our Care Visions family talks. As you may know from reading about this event, Care Visions has been looking after children and young people for many years, and we're now moving much more into how do we support parents. I'm Linda de Caestecker. I'm a doctor. I was a public health doctor for many, many years, and now I'm working with Care Visions. I've had many different jobs and roles in my life, and I have to say the hardest one of all, but also the most satisfying, was being a parent of 4 children, all of whom are grown up, and I'm now a grandmother of 11, which is hard work too, but great fun. So that's me. I'm going to introduce you to Scott Kyle next, and then we'll come on to Anita. Scott, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Linda. So, yeah, I'm Scott Kyle. I'm a foster carer. I've been a foster carer for 3 years. My wife and I look after 2 teenagers, a 14-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl, and they've been with us for 3 years, and they're now on a permanent placement. And we go on holiday on the 11th of November, which is very exciting. When I'm not being a foster carer, I do various different things. Sometimes I'm an actor, which is great. Sometimes I'm a producer, and during the lockdown, I was a care worker, which kind of was the bridge into becoming a foster carer. I was working 2 days a week with a young autistic lad, and it changed my life, and it was the best job I've had in my 40 years on the planet. Was the 2 years during the lockdown, spending 2 days a week looking after a young lad. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And I should have said that we hope that these events will be, obviously they're aimed at parents and foster parents, but also to people who are carers and may want to talk about some of the challenges that they face. But we're delighted. Scott and I are going to co-host these events, and our first guest in this first event is Anita Cleare. And so, Anita, we're so happy you're with us. And do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background academically is actually developmental psychology, which is child development, really. And I've been working with parents now for about 20 years, just over 20 years. That number keeps creeping up. I started off working in a local authority, children's services. So I was actually in family support, managing and delivering all types of services, all the way from early intervention and prevention services, Sure Start children's centres, kind of family support in terms of parenting courses, parenting support, all the way through to quite heavy-end family interventions and family support. And I set up on my own. I set up the Positive Parenting Project in about 2011. And now I write, speak, about parenting. I have a small private practice coaching parents on parenting issues, but largely I work through the corporate sector. So I go into big workplaces, big companies, and I try and deliver evidence-based kind of parenting support. So to bring the quality of what we know about parenting from research, but really bring it into where parents can access it easily, you know, on their laptop at lunchtime or in their workplace. So they're not having to go seek it out. And particularly working with parents who, well, working parents, and most parents are working parents now. And I've got a specialism in supporting parents of children with anxiety. So supporting parents to help their children's mental health across the ages. And yeah, as I've just written a new book called, and I'm going to flash this at the beginning so that I remember to do it, called How to Get Your Teenager Out of Their Bedroom. This one came out in September. I wrote a book about 4 years ago before this called The Work Parent Switch. So this one's for parents of kind of children, parents and carers of children from about 11 upwards. The first book was up to about age 11. So they kind of divide across the age range.
So, Anita, if you're seen as an expert in parenting, does that mean you get it all right for your children and family?
Oh, I wish, Linda, I wish. I'm slightly uncomfortable with the expert word, and I use it because I don't know how else to describe myself. But obviously, parenting is one of those things that it's much easier to see what other people are doing, to spot other people's patterns, other people's dynamics. When you look at other people parenting their children, whether they're in your family or their friends or someone else, it's like we see really clearly kind of the lines of exactly what's going on there. And it's easy to analyze those dynamics. When you're in a parenting relationship, there's a lot of heat. There's a lot of emotion. It's like it's in technicolor and it's not simple to see what's happening. And every time we are with our children, we bring with us all our previous other experiences of being with them, and we love our children, and that complicates things enormously, all of which is a very long way for me to say I most certainly have not got it all right with my children. We're quite a neurospicy family, so we've got quite a bit of neurodiversity, which always, is a bit of a challenge. And one of my teenagers had a really hard time with mental health. And I've sometimes worried that, people are going to think because I'm a parenting expert, my kids are supposed to be amazing. They're just like your kids, anybody else's kids. They get things wrong. They do the things that their mum wants the ground to open up and swallow her for, and just think, oh, please, I hope nobody knows about that.
That's so reassuring that we're in this together and we've all had these difficulties as well as the joys of being a parent. Scott, do you relate to that as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we've kind of been thrust into. My wife and I give you a wee background. So I was in care when I was younger, so I'm care experienced. I chat to our two kids about that, and that follows me everywhere I go. I'm back at university as part of my job working in the theatres, and I've been taken into rooms to say, as a care experienced student, you get this support and that support, so it kind of never leaves you. But yeah, I've only been a kind of looking after anybody else in the last 5 years of my life. As I say, it started out during the lockdown, becoming a kind of care worker, and then having kind of two young kids. Like you imagine, we've all been on maybe the first date, and it's awkward. We had that with two teenagers. We're meeting in the park. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of things I imagine that we don't even have the backdrop of having failed when the kids were too young to know that we were failing. And they see all our mistakes in their glory. Do you know what I mean? And they're old enough to comment on it and point it out to you. So yeah, but the big thing we encourage. We encourage chat, and we encourage, well, I certainly, when I'm chatting away with the kids, maybe if they've lost a device or something for behaviour, I encourage them that everything's a negotiation. That you're not getting your devices till tomorrow night at 6 o'clock or whatever it may be. It also can be if you went and did all your chores and you do anything else, you can back to the table and try and renegotiate. And encourage them with that. But yeah, there's lots of getting it. One of the big things we've had is those awkward moments when you're a foster carer, is in front of maybe the school gates, and people say, "Oh, your dad this," and we had to have a wee chat with the kids. How do you want us to, kind of deal with that? I don't want to go, "Oh no, I'm no such and such his dad." Do you know what I mean? Because is that the right way to do it? Either is it? So we kind of chatted to the kids to see how we are handling it. Is that okay? Is that okay with you? Is that the right way to do it? And thing, obviously, as the years go past and time passes, those moments are less awkward. But I think at the start, they're big panic moments of, am I handling that properly? Am I doing that right? So yeah, you kind of learn from it. But one thing I was going to say, Linda, as well, was that if people do have a question, what I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I'd be interested if anyone's got a question that they could say on camera, but they could also maybe introduce themselves and tell us their circumstances before asking that question, because it also gives different voices to the conversation and different faces, and sometimes we of us get to know you as well, rather than it just coming from the questions, if that's all right, Linda. But at the same time, I understand time as well, so do I open something up and there's no time, because I really try to do it.
Well, Ben's in the background, so if people are feeling that they want to ask the question in person, we can make that happen. So we can do a combination.
It'd be nice to get to know everyone. I can see some people maybe got their screens off there now, but it's also nice to see who we're chatting to and who's listening as well, if you can, because I know everybody's circumstances are different.
So Ben's saying, if you want to unmute and ask a question, if you raise your hand and you'll know how to do that, then we can make that happen. Anita, just can you tell us a bit about your book then? How to get your teenager out of the bedroom. Tell us what your thinking is, but why do teenagers want to withdraw like that and stay in their room? And then what are some of the strategies to get them out of there?
Well, on the one hand, it's a really normal thing for teenagers to do because the whole teenage development project is about independence. That's what their developmental goal is, that whole of the second decade. And to do that, they need to separate from family and parents to kind of move themselves away, work out how they fit in with their peer group, with their friends, who they are, and they need to start making their own decisions. So it's a really natural process. And bedrooms are like these little natural training grounds where they can do some of that. We get good at things by practicing them. We don't just sort of, learn things in theory. When it comes to child development, the more often we do it, the stronger the brain pathway is, and the more we learn that. So teens withdraw to their bedrooms to practice being independent and take control over their space and those kind of things. So it's a really natural process. However, I think now there's a bit of a problem because more often than not, teenagers have got screens or digital devices in those bedrooms. So it's like the magnetic pull towards their bedroom is incredibly strong. Whereas in the past, I'm very old. So, when I was young, the TV was downstairs. If I wanted to watch it, I had to go into the family. I had to leave my room to do that. So although I had the haven of my room, I could, fantasize about pop stars and sing things with my hairbrush. I could do lots of stuff. I also needed to leave. There was a pull back into the family. Nowadays, it is such a strong magnetic pull that devices have that we end up that parents really don't know what to do about that. They feel, naturally, and I'm sure anybody who's been through this process, when you have younger children, we love our kids to pieces and we put a lot of effort in. And especially these days, there's been a real intensification of parenting and we spend a lot of time with them. We supervise them a lot. We don't allow them to be independent. We put a lot of hard work into trying to be good parents. And then they get to 11, 12, turn around and want nothing to do with us. And that's very hurtful. But we also don't know how to reach out to them. We worry about them. We know there's a mental health crisis. So lots of parents are just feeling like, what do I do? Is this harmful? What should I be doing? So the book was a response to that. The conversations I was having with parents of people saying, I don't know if they're okay. I don't talk to them. And I thought I'd try and pull together some ideas for what needed to happen to really empower parents. And the biggest theme in the book is relationship, really. It's that, and this is true in all stages of parenting, I think, that our project as parents is to maintain a relationship with them, despite the fact that they don't want one with us necessarily, or they only want it on their own terms, or they only want it at certain times. Our job is to really hold open that relationship for them so that they can come back into it. But because of the devices, we also have to kind of make sure we're closing off that they can't just stay there the whole time. Otherwise, we wouldn't get to see them at all. And some of the book's also about kind of the social anxieties, the pressures that teens are under, all of the anxiety that goes with living digital kind of social lives and the pressure that they're under at school and just of what social media creates for them. And how do we maintain relationship? How do we just get to see them given all of those things? I'd love to summarize everything that it says, but it is a whole book. So that's quite hard to do.
I'll have to read it.
But I'm really happy to drill down on any of those bits.
I know a number of people who say, well, here's a day when we've got no screen time as a family. We're putting the phones away and we're going to do some other things. What do you think of that as a way of working?
I think what we don't want to do is just be battling our kids about being on screens the whole time, because we just get too worn out by that and we give up. We're kind of like, that's just, my life is too kind of full of negativity because I'm constantly battling over iPads or whatever it is. So if you can have kind of buffers and zones around screens that are whole family ones, not just about the teens. So that might be, as you said, days of the week or parts of the day. This part of the day is always screen free for everybody, adults included. Or this part of our home is always screen free, adults included. This is something we do together as a family, which is low tech or hopefully screen free. So prioritizing kind of family time activities that don't involve screens, or squeezing them out a little bit by having these routines and rituals that involve the kids and that they're not allowed screens. We do have to stick to that, though. Consistency is always everything in parenting, and that's not easy. But if you can pick a few rules, and if we can treat our teenagers like young adults, so rather than banning them and saying, okay, you're not allowed screens, we might say, right, what I'm worried about really is that because you're on screens all the time, you're not getting any exercise, or you're not doing other things that are good for you. Because that's the big thing. It's not just what are they doing on the screen, what are they not doing because they're on the screen. So if we want to encourage them to do homework, or we want to encourage them to do exercise or to do chores around the house, anything, what we could say is, well, you don't get the screens until those things are done. And then that's your choice. I'm going to treat you like a young adult. You don't want to do your chores. That's your choice, but you don't get the screen. So that we give them the opportunity to regulate and make choices so that they learn how to do that, because they are going to have to learn how to do that. At some point, they're going to have unfettered access to these things. And we've got to actually help them be good decision makers.
Yeah.
Anita, I'm noticing that Mark's got his hand up, so I'm going to go to Mark in a wee second. But just before that, I just want to share a wee antidote of my own personal experience. So what you're saying there is, so one of the things with the kids is obviously screen time, as you mentioned, so important. It's one of the only kind of things we can put in place when the kids are maybe misbehaving. It's the thing they care about the most, I suppose. So there's been times of so to give you an idea, who we look after are 14 and 13. Last year, they both passed their driving theory test online, right, on the mock test. And they did that because I was doing it for my motorcycle. And I said, they asked what it was. I told them a bit about it. I said, if you can pass it, I'll give you £50. So it's £1 a question. So they took them weeks. It took them weeks to do it, but they were coming home from school trying to get this £50 and doing this test every day. And I try to teach them about you're not going to get the 50, on day 2. So you've got to be willing to fail it maybe 100 times before you pass it. So they'd lost their devices or whatever for whatever reason, and they said, "Is there anything we can do?" Remember the negotiating I was telling you about? Is there anything we can do to get the devices back? And I said, "Well, at my work, I'm doing the liquor license, the Scottish liquor license of how to be a license holder." I said, I think it's 40 questions, and you need to get 28 or something out of it. So the two of them whip a laptop on their way in the room, studying the liquor license laws, right? And bear in mind, I think they're 13 and 14 by this time. And they come back in, they say, we can pass it, right? They've been away 2 hours. And I'm saying, was it hard? They said, it wasn't hard, it's just annoying because we knew we had to fail it so many times, like you've taught us, before we would get it right. But yeah, we kind of use that, and I kind of use a learning incentive to try and get them, to show them that they've got the skills to learn as well, but also that wee bit of, you say, negotiating, because you know what, it's set. Sometimes when you're a bit peeved that they've maybe not done something, you can say, right, that's the punishment. And then a wee bit later, you're feeling terrible, going, I don't know if I've maybe been too strict there. So if they come in and negotiate, that's a good time for them to negotiate. But sorry, I'll hand it over to Mark. But Mark, could you introduce yourself? Tell us maybe a wee bit about yourself, and then ask a question, if that's all right.
Yeah, no worries. So my name's Mark Nellis. I'm an operations manager at Care Visions fostering agency. I've been with Care Visions we've been 9 years in May, so quite a time. I've been in the SSW role, supervising social worker role, for 8.5 years, and just stepped into the operations manager recently. So really kind of interested in a lot of the things you're saying. I've kind of, at one point, and now I've got two just off the kind of back of what you're saying there. So Anita, just what you're talking about obviously the importance of kind of kids who do like their screen time, like to be in the room. And I think, it's got a lot more meaning to them than just playing an Xbox or playing a play. You know, it's actually how they socialise these days. It's not, you know, what we often find is, you know, sometimes it's almost a consequence to say to a kid, go out and kick a ball. You know, it's like, so it's that kind of, we've maybe had a lot of carers, and we've probably advocated for it over the years about maybe taking a mobile phone, you know, as a luxury, you know, but a mobile phone for me now isn't a luxury. It's almost a need now rather than a want, and it's something that we're trying to actually kind of steer away from. Now, I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think it's quite helpful to suggest maybe the reasons not to the screen times, maybe for your health and maybe the physical side of it. So I think that's maybe a good angle to go down for us. So it was just to kind of chip on that. And my second point was just relating to, you know, the teenagers who do spend time in their bedroom. And I was wondering, Anita, how you feel about relating it slightly to trauma, because it's something that we are kind of talking about at the moment, about a lot of things that you don't want to talk about just in case it rocks a boat. And sometimes by not talking about it, then you end up 2-3 years down the line and it just blows up. But, you know, placements end, you know, kids move on. So how important would you say it is about speaking to children who's kind of 8, 9, 10, 11 about the teenage years, about maybe your own experiences? You know, I wasn't necessarily a teenager who spent loads of time in my room. I don't know if that makes me weird or not, but I know lots of kids do, and it is an absolute normal thing. So in terms, I just want to see what your views on addressing that and saying, you know, you're going to get to a stage that you aren't going to want to speak to me, and, you know, trying to get a solution before it happens. Is that something you would suggest?
Yeah, I mean, taking your first point about, you know, phones and taking them away, I completely agree with you. I don't think we should be resorting to taking stuff away all the time. I don't think it's helpful. And we have to think about why are kids so obsessed with their phones? And the truth is, their friends live in their phones, or their friends live in that gaming console, and their job at this age is friendships, is working all of that out, so that the pull is really intense for those things. So what we don't want to do is just be criticizing them. And I don't think it helps at all to criticize them and say, well, you know, don't be so stupid. You're on your phone all the time. Just put it down. Actually understanding why they want to be, you know, on those phones is really important. And that point that you made about talking to them, I think curiosity at the heart of relationship building is curiosity, and being able to talk to kids of any age about why they do something. Now, we have to be careful about how we have that conversation, because sometimes it's hard to answer. But if we're curious about how does it make you feel to, you know, play on your Xbox, you know, we want to understand, what are they getting from this? Children do these things because there's some kind of benefit to them. Now, it could be that it's just, oh, well, it's a laugh. My friends are on the Xbox. Or it could be, actually, my thoughts and feelings are really troubling and difficult at the moment, and this numbs them. And those are two really different reasons and motivations for being on a device. So having a sense of why they're doing something is important, and having the conversation, it's like, great, I love that you love your friends. Wouldn't it be great if you could also do this sometimes? I can't let you just sit down the whole time. Or, that's really interesting that you're finding your thoughts and feelings hard. I wonder if there are other ways that you could also manage that might be more healthy. So thinking about other ways that would be helpful. So we don't want to be criticizing them. Friendships, their job at this moment. But we do want them to be encouraging them to have other healthy habits. And sometimes one small change, being able to collaborate, being able to say, why don't you, you know, tomorrow just look at half an hour of getting outside and doing something. Sometimes that one small change and them feeling the benefit of it is how you move forward. It's not always about rules. I think you have to judge the child that you're with, the situation that you're in, the age that they're at. The younger they are, the more important the rules are. But the older they are, the more important it is that we collaborate, we respect, and we help them make good decisions. And it's about making that journey with them rather than being absolutist or critical, because we worry about them being on social media because of the horrible things that people are going to say to them. And yet they look up from their phones and we criticize them for being on social media or for doing the things that they do, which makes them not want to look up from their phones. So that isn't helpful. So relationship has to be driven by, I think, that curiosity and collaboration.
And
Just
oh no, Lee's just saying, her daughter would say, well, why, I'm on social media because all my friends are. That's the way we connect. And that is the way of life now, isn't it? And we have to accept that. But she's also saying that, a number of her friends have mental health challenges, so they're not going out as much. So
exactly. And I think it's important I think it's really important to know that there isn't a single cause of the youth mental health crisis, but definitely somewhere in the mix, technology and screens are there. Now, what we want to do is get the positives of that. We want to be able to go to kids and say, I get it. I get why you want to be on TikTok, because it's really important to you to know the things your friends are talking about, to be able to participate in those conversations. I get that. However, as someone who cares about you, I have to care about the whole you. And the whole you includes your mental health and your physical health. So how can we find a way that, yes, you get to do those things, but also we get some breaks from that, where you get to go out and move your body and give your brain a little bit of a refresh. So it's not criticizing them. It's actually saying, I get it, but let's also, look at how we can widen that experience.
Anita, do you think there's anything in with the pandemic? So you imagine when the pandemic first hit, what we were all trying to do as adults is make it. You can have fun in the house and not go near people. You can still have a great time, not going near people. Look at the games you can play. Look at the things you can do. You can have a video with your friends, and you don't have to see them in person. So for 2 years, the young generation have been coming through, getting encouraged by their peers, the support network, saying, look, you don't have to go and play football in the park. You can play it online, or you can do these other things online. And now we've got all that experience, and the kids are going, all right, you know what? I've learned to live in this world. And then we're saying, you need to go out more. You need to go down the park with your friends. You need to go and do this with your friends.
And you're so right there, Scott. The pandemic was a big shift, but the change was happening before that. And what's really noticeable is there's a change in how children play. And that was happening before the pandemic. And a lot of that is to do with us as a generation of parents being incredibly risk averse. And we have reasons to be risk averse, because the environment that we're bringing up our kids in often is quite dangerous in terms of things like traffic and cars, and the built environment has not taken children's play needs into account. But what we see when we look at the bigger picture is this real shift between children playing independently, playing outside, playing with each other, into them playing individually in the home, and then devices, of course, just kind of amplify that. So that was already happening. And then obviously with COVID, that big kind of step change in our habits around, socializing, around recreation. So we've got that change happening already. But interestingly, the thing that worries me is that we also have a de-skilling of parents going on. Because if you grow up as a parent with technology as a tool and as a strategy, it's a very powerful and easy tool to use. So if your child, if they're, really little one is fractious or noisy or, bored, it's very easy. Let's give them a screen to look at. That will quieten them down. And it works. Mm-hmm. So parents learn to use this tool as a strategy. As a society, we have become less tolerant of children being children, of children playing, of children making mistakes, of children being out on the streets and, teenagers doing stuff that teenagers do. Parents feel like they're going to be blamed. So I spoke to a mum the other day who said, I don't know how to get my children to come inside from the garden without offering them an iPad. Well, I said, why do you need them to come inside from the garden? And she said, because they're noisy and it will annoy the neighbours. And that to me was all of this in a nutshell. Actually, they're being children. They should be outside. And we haven't, as parents, developed other ways of working with our children. Now, Linda and I both parented before everyone had a computer in their phones. There were mobile phones. I'm not that old, but, they didn't have computers in them. It is possible to do, but we had to learn how to do it. We kind of skilled ourselves up. And it was hard and it was frustrating, just like all parenting. So what I worry about is that, we're ending up with the pandemic, with parents not really having wider strategies and us being so risk averse. Parents say to me, but at least I know where he is. Yes, he's playing his Xbox, but at least I know where he is. And the truth is, where he should be is probably in the park with his mates, but we've spent his whole life telling him he mustn't do that. We've not let him do it. Whereas I was allowed to go to the park, with my friends when I was 5, and now that would be unheard of.
Anita, do you think there's anything in from a parent's point of view as well? So when I grew up, probably I was a bit like Mark's mentioned, I was never in the house, but my mum had 4 jobs. So we were safer out playing than in the house because she worried that we'd be in and put the chip fan on and building the house down. So we were encouraged out in the street, from morning till night. We were the last kids to go home at the end of the night when everybody else had went. Nowadays, it's probably, and what my point I suppose was that my mum was very busy, but we were outside playing. Parents and everything with the financial situation as people are taking on other jobs. Some people are doing deliveries at night time, kind of trying to earn more money. So the idea is that the kids are safe in the room as well. So there's a wee bit of steering from the parents that it's not just a babysitter, but it's a safe environment where you can leave the kids. Is there an unintended consequence of that as well?
And we are so scared of being judged, of judging ourselves for anything that might happen to them if we do allow them to be outside unsupervised. So although parents are now working, so more parents now work, but more parents parent more. So there's been this real kind of intensification of parenting. We look at the number of hours parents spend with children, and it's gone up despite all those factors that you've mentioned, Kyle, because we're keeping kids at home and they're sedentary and they're in their rooms. And to me, it feels like a bit of a crisis point that we're at, that we need to find ways where teenagers can have more rounded lives, where families can reconnect, and where we aren't judging parents for children doing the things that children need to do as part of their development.
And Jane's saying we weren't allowed out, but we were allowed to have our friends in, and maybe even that's curtailed a bit now. So what's the answer to that? We can't turn the clock back. We can't say we're in a different world. So what does a parent do about these issues?
Well, I think one of the first things, we've got a new generation of kids coming up, and I think there's a lot of work being done on how we change their relationships with screens before they become teenagers. And that's important work to do, that the delay message, to stop rushing to give them these devices and to hold off a little bit, because traditionally we've been the country in Europe that has given mobile phones at the earliest age. We really have been, quite keen on giving our kids screens. So thinking about how we change that. But for those of us who've, got teens now, or, who've already in this world, this idea that we have relationships and we talk to our children, that rather than thinking it's my job to make those decisions, actually it's our job to open up discussions with them and say, these are the things I worry about. Tell me, what it's like being you. How would you feel if you did this? How can we agree that we change something? Being good role models as well. If we're permanently attached to our phones, we don't have a leg to stand on. So I don't think there's one single solution, but I do think relationship is a better answer than authoritarianism with teenagers. Usually that tends to backfire, and it is about reaching out and not just leaving them to it. And that might be just knocking on their door and taking in a hot chocolate and just reminding them that we love them, rather than leaping on every moment that we see them to say, oh, have you done your homework? Have you done that? Finding those little micro bridges, I call them in the book micro bridges, to build relationship fun. When you've only got tiny bits of time, you have to use those really carefully to build relationship, and trying to have those conversations and that curiosity, rather than just thinking there is a simple solution.
Yeah, you've maybe started to answer what I was going to ask next, because you've been speaking about talking to your child, asking your your child, your teenager, how they're feeling, or why do you like being on the Xbox? But if your child won't speak to you, I don't mean is, not speaking, but just doesn't open up. What are some of the ways, you've given one example there, but what are some of the ways you can get your child to have that discussion?
And that's a really real concern, particularly where they've got very low mood, or, potentially depression. And there's a lot of that out there. Sometimes it's all about timing with teenagers, isn't it? If it's the wrong time, it doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter what conversation or kind of gambit you start with. If it's the wrong time, it's not going to work. So that popping into their room and just gauging the temperature in there. And you might be taking in a banana and just saying, oh, I thought you might like this. And you look at them and you're like, yeah, you don't want me to stay, do you, right now? It's like, you don't want me. And I would often say that to my son to make him laugh. I'd start saying something, I'd look at him and I'd say, you want me to leave, don't you? And he'd smile at that and I'd leave. It'd be like, okay, that's fine. Yet another time, if the timing's right, you might get that little bit of connection and conversation. And trying to respond to their little offers, their little kind of bids for attention and conversation, even when we're busy. And that's hard. We've got such busy lives and they're always inconvenient. It's always last thing at night when you're rushing or, something's happening and they kind of just lurk around a little bit. And you're like, okay, so now is a moment where you might want to talk. But we have to keep on trying. We can't go in and say, how are you feeling? You might take a little guess. And I always recommend to parents that venturing a really tentative guess in a loving way, saying, you know what? It looks from the outside like you're feeling a bit low at the moment. I don't know if that's how it feels on the inside, but that's what I see. And just kind of putting that out there to give them a little bridge into a conversation. We can't make them talk, but they're much more likely to talk to us if they feel like the response that they get won't be to judge them or to fix them, or, that will be genuine and curious and that they feel that relationship is still there. I can see there's lots of things going on in the chat, and we've got Han.
Moira was saying that similar to you. I think sometimes we tell teenagers what they need, also creating that potential conflict. Whereas when we tell teenagers what we need, we want our time with them, we're missing them, we want to speak to them, we love them, you can get a different response. I think sometimes, as you say, when you're busy and you're trying to get everything done, that isn't the way we approach it, is it? But you're absolutely right. It's much more likely to work. And Lucia Marie is saying most teenagers have a broken relationship with parents, especially a lot of single mothers. So it's much harder if you're a single mother. Do you have or single parent, any comments on that?
I mean, I live in a blended family. So my husband is not my children's father. And because we got together quite late in their lives, although we were a family and I had the privilege of having a partner, it very much felt like the kids were my responsibility. They were my kids. And he's got his own kids. It's, it's complex, it's messy. And certainly when my teen was going through a hard time, the weight of that was on me. It was me he was pushing away. It was me he was lashing out at. It was me that felt the responsibility, and it's me that felt his pain. And very often as a single parent, we identify with our children. We've got a lot of love from them. And when that goes away, that's really difficult if that's a really big source of love in our lives. So there can be lots of really difficult emotions that go on. And the biggest thing we can do as adults who are caring for teenagers is to manage our own stuff, our own thoughts, our own emotions, and kind of really regulate ourselves so that we don't add fuel to the fire of whatever they're going through. And that's hard. And I'm really curious, Scott, about your experiences there, because if you see a teenager having a hard time that you care about, certainly for me, I found that very triggering from my own teen years. All of my kind of old pains and hurts and distress at being a teenager came crashing in on that. And I had to go find a way to manage that. Otherwise, it made everything worse.
There's a book that I've been working on with the kids called How to Talk to Anyone by Leo Laudes. I don't know if any of you came across it. It's well worth looking up if any of you haven't. How to Talk to Anyone. It's 92 social skills, we kind of tricks and techniques of how we get the kids to do conversations and stuff. And I, again, did the financial incentive thing. So I said to them, a memory test, if they could memorise all the techniques, they would get £1 per technique. I think they got 72 pounds out of me. They could recite 72 techniques in a row and they get 72 pounds. So one of the techniques in the book is communication, right? And this came up a lot. You were chatting about, Anita, about family dinners and stuff. We try and do device free and stuff like that. So we've done some things you're saying, but communication essentially is sitting at the dinner table. Can I get a dessert? Can I get a McDonald's? Can I get? And I would normally have a laugh with the kids, and I'd say, me coming through. It's all about me coming through. And a communication is putting the you into the sentence. So I say to them, if you ask me, Scott, are you having a dessert? I say, I'm always having a dessert, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to say, I'm going to have a chocolate cake, and I'm going to ask you, what do you want? So it comes back to you. Communication comes back to you anyway. And when you're in a friends group, you can't always say what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to do that. Even though you might end up doing what you want to do, but you need to ask other people what they want, and that was communication. So I wanted to come to Mark, and I also wanted to, I think Lee's question's a really important one as well about phones in schools. But Mark, just to bring another voice in as well, because I'm aware that everyone's listening's hearing the same three voices at the moment, so it's good to bring in any voices.
No, just come back to your point, Anita. You were just talking about like the kind of door openers, just kind of try that, the micro bridge you mentioned, kind of probably exposing too much here, but that way if my wife's had a bad day, you maybe disappear up and hand in a wee hot water bottle, no matter how my day's been, the difference that can make, and I think it relates quite a lot to, a kind of model that we kind of work with therapeutic crisis for intervention with families, and it's all about kind of knowing where you are and that, where your emotions are and where your feelings are before you kind of go put yourself in a situation. That door opener into a teenage room could lead to a 3-hour discussion, and if you're not really up for that, then it's a shutdown, and it's, that's that door closed again. So I think it's a really kind of key point about where you're at in the moment, but also as well, sometimes being able to kind of, as the adults, being able to put our feelings aside a wee bit, and use our own networks round about us to kind of, or the people around us to talk about. So I like that idea of that kind of caring gesture almost out of the blue. Like, I've just brought you in a bag of crisps. I didn't ask for a bag of crisps, but there you go. We've got a wee chat on the go. So I think that's something our foster carers, some of them may well do that, but I think it's a nice thing just an extra week, because we do have that, the kids are really withdrawn, they're not wanting to speak. And that could probably relate to all age groups, to be fair. So no, I just liked it as a kind of potential mechanism to try and get things going. So just wanted to kind of put that out there.
It's a great comment, though, that you need to think about where you are and how you're feeling. Do you have any comment on that, Anita? That's a really good point.
I think it is absolutely essential that we manage ourselves. And I think not only that we manage our emotions, but we manage our thoughts, because very often parents, particularly parents, and I can't speak as a carer, but parents kind of panic in the teenage years. We see our teenagers doing things wrong, or we see them always on their phones, or we see them perhaps making mistakes, not doing their homework, or, doing what they are supposed to do, which is to get things wrong, to fail, to try again. And we panic. We're like, oh my goodness, time is running out. They've got to get it right now. And when we panic, we start to catastrophize. And we're kind of, before we know it, maybe there's one piece of homework that they haven't handed in. And we're like, oh, but, they're going to go down a set in maths, and then they're going to fail their exams, and they're going to end up working at McDonald's, and they're never going to leave home. And it's like we get on this train of worry about their future, because we judge ourselves so harshly on whether our children succeed. And we take too much responsibility for whether or not they're going to succeed. So we have to manage our thoughts a little bit. We certainly have to manage our feelings, and we have to manage our expectations, because although they might look quite grown up on the outside, teenagers are not fully formed adults yet. Their brains are still going through massive amounts of development. They're going through a specific developmental phase, and we have to be the grown-ups and do the work rather than getting outraged that they're not behaving like grown-ups, but they're not grown-ups. We are. So we have to take responsibility for that and manage ourselves and be the adult in the room.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Jane, I know Lee's got a question about phones in schools, but just to keep on that point, Jane was saying that she's got a child who always wants to talk at 11 o'clock at night. She said, look, could we find a different time? But he's on his computer or with friends earlier. How do you negotiate that?
I don't think you do. Ultimately, I think you talk at 11 o'clock at night. You take every bridge they offer, if you possibly can, because we want them to talk to us, and they're not going to talk on demand. And when they're there doing it, that's the bit where we go, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to do that. And yes, we can try and encourage them to do it at another time. We can try and go out for walks with them, do something else. But if they want to talk whenever you possibly can, pick up what they're offering, that conversational topic as much as you can, because that is about keeping the relationship going and being available to them.
I think Moira's saying something similar, that it's when they don't have distractions, their minds start to go, and that's when they're wanting to ask you things. Scott, you'd mentioned that Lee had asked about schools. Do you have a view on that? I'm not sure what I think. I'm an old-fashioned person. I would say, of course, they should be.
Yeah, I'm probably with. It's a wee bit like it goes back to Mark made a really good point about the phones are like. I think I'm at work and I've got my phone. I actually started a new job recently, and it's in a castle. That's just the headquarters, and there's you can't get a mobile phone signal. And I've actually moved my desk to the visiting centre, because, and I said that I told a truth and a lie in it, and I said, well, as a foster carer, I need to have access to the phone if a school phoned or anything, which is absolute truth. The other bit as well is, though, I don't know that I could function all day without my phone as well, and that's going back to probably Mark's point. I'm like, I couldn't be in the office all day and nobody texting to say what are we doing for dinner or all the other things that you do. As well, so yeah, I think no, I'm probably Linda, if you're seeing your old school. I'm like, I don't think the phones in school are great for a number of reasons. I think bullying, the WhatsApp groups, people standing in someone's company, chatting about someone and laughing about them in the WhatsApp groups. So many things about it. I just don't think it's really needed in school. But at the same time, like after schools, the parents are saying, here's the pickup arrangements, here's those certain things. So I think there could be the certain things where I think they do I think some concerts are trying to do it where you lock away the phone at the start of it and you get it back at the interval and you get it back at the end. But yeah, the phones are so much more than just a mobile phone now, but also they can be weapons of destruction and bullying in schools and stuff. So they can be really detrimental to folk as well. So
I think, most parents would feel quite grateful if schools made the decision to ban phones, because at least they would know for that period of the day, they haven't got phones. And that is a big buffer. And I was talking about buffers and spaces in their day, and that would be a really big one. And there may have to be provisos on that. There may have to be that, yes, they can go and access their phone with a specific reason, because there are teens who perhaps have got family circumstances who might need contact. So we might have to have some kind of, provisos around that. But as a general rule, I don't think that schools should be in phones. There are lots of experts who disagree with me, though, because the evidence isn't really clear. And I think that's one of the big things about this debate at the moment, that we've got a lot of evidence and a lot of debate amongst experts about exactly what that evidence says. And some people are just not keen on banning things if there's not clear evidence that says this is the right way to do it. Personally, I think I'd be more than happy if my school did that. I would be quite grateful for it.
Mark's, sorry, I was just going to say Mark's comment that if you really can't talk and your child wants to, but there's a good reason, then you can say, well, I will make the time. I'm not ignoring you, and that we'll find another time. But there's also Anita's point: grab that opportunity when it's there.
I would say, though, was it Jane, or who was? Yeah, Jane's talking about 11 o'clock at night. I've got two teenagers that do what I used to do at school: is they try and get you talking at bedtime. bedtime. They want to come in and, oh, it's bedtime. So how was your day? They start being really interested in all the things. And I remember back to school when I'm going, if you get the teacher talking, you don't need to do the work. So you try to ask the teacher all the questions, and sometimes, so I think you've got to be open to the right timing for a chat, and then making sure as well that they're not trying to take advantage of your good side, you know. But the other thing I was going to say on was one of the things that we went out on the bikes and stuff when the kids first arrived. We did lots of outdoor stuff. There was a number of reasons with that. Is we felt that you're going to relax. Well, one's wanted to tire the kids out and get all their energy out when we're out and about in the bikes or walking or doing stuff out of the house, but also that coming home should be a nice thing. And I've come into, so if you're here all day, you maybe you not take it for granted, but you don't really appreciate what you're coming into. So we spent, and one of the wee techniques I used to do, and Karen, my wife, would laugh away at me, is that, the kids are always up for a McDonald's, right? I don't know many kids that don't want a McDonald's. So I'd say to kids, we go for McDonald's and we're walking it. We're not going in the car, we're walking down to McDonald's. So we'd walk down to McDonald's, and we'd walk down to McDonald's at Rutherglen. And then next week they'd say, can we go for McDonald's? Yep, no worries. McDonald's isn't that way. I'm saying, we're not going to that McDonald's, we've got a different McDonald's. We walked into Cambuslang McDonald's, and it might be a wee bit further or whatever, but it means we'll get that wee bit of time walking by the Clyde side or wherever, walking. And I think Mark was chatting about, if you've got that time where devices are away, you end up having conversations that you wouldn't maybe normally have, and that wee thing of, this is a different route, so there's a park over there, or there's a memory, something that sparks another conversation. So we used to do it, and I got to the stage that we'd have to walk to the city centre. We'd walk along the Clyde side into Glasgow to get the McDonald's, and we'd go to the shops and maybe end up at the cinema. But the kind of wee funny thing was, I would say to them, be careful, you've got to be specific in your ask. You just asked for McDonald's, you never said Rutherglen or Cambuslang, so now we're going to the town, and just have a wee bit of play within it. But it was, in all seriousness, it was great time walking together, just walking, just chat.
Food is one of the best baits to get teenagers out of their bedrooms. Almost always, food is a really good option with a lot of teenagers. That will work, especially if it's their favourite fast food restaurant, whichever one that might be.
I'm just waiting for Scott to say, and then we went to the McDonald's in Edinburgh.
on the bike, we're going to Falkirk, the Falkirk wheel. We're cycling there, get the McDonald's in Falkirk.
We're coming to the end of our time, but before we do, Anita, can you say a bit more about the work and the books you've written about working parents and a survival guide? As you say, most of ours are working and parenting. How do you tackle these?
So my first book, so in the UK, it's known as The Work Parent Switch. And the idea of the book is that when we go to work, the skills and the strengths that we need for work very often are different from the skills and the strengths that we need for parenting and caring. Now, even if you're in a kind of caring role at work, we're very often using a lot of our executive functions, our planning, kind of being strategic. We're thinking 3 steps ahead. I call it efficiency thinking in the book. And we have a lot of kind of that project management, right? What do I need to do next? And now, and when do I need to deliver that by? Whereas when we go home and when we're with kids, particularly with really young kids, but actually, older children too, we need to stand down. That kind of marching through time, 3 steps ahead, got to get this done. Because what we don't want to do is walk in the house and just suddenly it's like, right, I've now got to do dinner and find your homework, and I've got to do this, this, and this. Because that gets in the way of connecting. Connecting comes when we're playful, when we're curious, when we're empathetic, and when we just accept that children won't get with the program because their brains don't really work like ours. So a lot of that was about how can working parents kind of actually dial down some of that solution-focused, goal-focused kind of, efficient thinking. And at the end of the day, try and be available to connect. Because many of the parents I talk to, they're time poor and they're exhausted at the end of the day. And we just haven't got the best bits of us left to kind of give to our families and our children. So thinking about how do we manage that? So that book was really about how do you do the connecting and still have a job, a career, demands upon you, and manage your energy, manage your kind of mindset to be able to parent and not get too frustrated with our kids because they don't stick with the program and they don't do the things that we kind of necessarily want them to do because they're children, and that's the way they work. So yeah, that's very much about positive parenting kind of strategies and connection strategies for parents with younger kids who are balancing that. And there are so many parents now who are dual income families with both parents working very long hours, who really are only getting little bits of time with their kids. So how do you use the little bits of time to connect? That it's not about having whole days, whole weeks, whole weekends with our kids. Actually, 15 minutes, if you've got 15 minutes with a child, what would the best thing to do be with those 15 minutes in order to connect? And just encouraging parents to think that way, rather than judging ourselves. These performance metrics that we have as parents on, do they eat broccoli? Have they cleaned their teeth? How are they doing at school? All of which we prioritize. So we spend all evening cajoling them and even shouting at them to clean their teeth and eat their broccoli, and forgetting that the whole point of parenting is to have a relationship with our children, and that's really what the priority should be. And to me, that's the real thread of everything I write about is about that relationship based parenting, and that means looking after ourselves to be available to have relationships.
I see such a difference when you're a grandparent and you're not in that stress situation and trying to get a young child to brush their teeth, and you encourage them and you say, well done. And it's so much less stressful than when I was trying to get 4 children to brush their teeth and I'd be shouting at them. So I wish I'd known that then, but we just have to accept where we are. We've reached the end of our time. So Anita, thank you so much. I think you are an expert, so I'm very happy with that term. It's been great, and it's been quite emotional to think about all you've been saying and about really connecting with your teenager. So thank you again for all joining, and it's been really interesting and helpful. Thank you.
Oh, take care, everyone.